Hey everyone, really glad to be back with my movies of the decade list, counting down again. This time we're going to be going through my number 60 through 41. So it's been exciting to go through this list with you, and let's get started. So my number 60 movie of the decade is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This is a really fun, kinetic movie directed by one of my favorite working directors right now, Edgar Wright. I just love the exciting pace of the movie and how it's kind of directed to look like a video game, which is really fun and unique choice. It's got some really fun original music as well. And Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is just really just a kinetic thrill ride is the way to say it, and it's heartfelt as well. So it's a really strong recommend for those of you who are fans of Edgar Wright's work, like Baby Driver and the Cornetto trilogy and others. So recommend on that one. My number 59 is a movie that came out in 2018. It's Roma, which is another one of the foreign language films on my list. Roma is just a really heartfelt, and it's a deep tale of this Mexican woman and what she is going through as she's raising these kids for the family she works for in her personal life. And something that's great about this is, so it's directed by Alfonso Cuarón. He's another one of my favorite working directors right now, and he based this off of the life of his own housekeeper, actually, and getting to watch that told through his eyes is a really beautiful thing. So Roma is a great movie and a great watch. It comes in at 59. My number 58 movie, this is a sad one. It's Manchester by the Sea. But what can I say about this movie aside from it's powerful, and it just does such a great job of helping you follow this character and understand where he is personally. Casey Affleck ended up winning Best Actor for this. He deserved it. It's just a phenomenal tale of tragedy, heartache, but it's a powerful and important one too. So Manchester by the Sea is a difficult one, but it's a recommend, and it certainly belongs on the list. Number 57, a movie I actually originally saw on Netflix. It stars Ryan Gosling. It's called The Place Beyond the Pines. This one came out in 2012. This movie makes the list because it makes a choice that at that time I had only seen done before in that movie alone. Now I've seen it in a couple movies, but just the way that the story progresses and a plot movement that happens partway through the movie, it just takes you to a whole new level, and the movie is so worth watching because of it. My number 56 is another Taika Waititi movie. It's What We Do in the Shadows. Like I said, I'm a sucker for Taika Waititi. I love his stuff. And What We Do in the Shadows is just the prime example of him at his comedic best. It's so fun to watch the guys from Flight of the Conchords play off one another, and to watch just the interaction. It's about basically these vampires, and it's done in a mockumentary style, and it was one of the funniest movies I saw this whole decade, and it's one that I'll definitely be going back to. Number 55. This movie came out in 2010, stars Natalie Portman. It's called Black Swan. It's directed by Darren Aronofsky, and it's definitely a tougher watch and a pretty, at times, disturbing tale, but it has a lot to say about drive, and really Natalie Portman's just almost sickening, and obviously has some problems mentally, even in her drive to reach perfection, essentially, and so many obstacles along the way as she's trying to become the Black Swan in this ballet of Swan Lake, and it's a really powerful tale. First Man is my number 54 movie of the decade. This one, another Ryan Gosling movie, and it tells the story of Neil Armstrong, but in a way that you've never seen it before. Of course, we associate Neil Armstrong with the moon landing, and it certainly tells that story, but we get to see the emotional journey that Neil goes on as well in this movie through the eyes of Ryan Gosling, as he really deals with, this is not a spoiler, it happens at the beginning of the movie, the passing of his daughter, and really overcoming that grief and tragedy through his time in space and his time on the moon. And it's a beautiful movie, and it's actually the first movie of a few by Damien Chazelle that'll be on this list. My number 53 movie of the decade is Creed, starring Michael B. Jordan, and of course a continuation of the Rocky franchise. I actually didn't see this one until recently, but when I saw it, I was incredibly impressed when I think of how Ryan Coogler was able to direct this movie so brilliantly and make it so relevant still as a Rocky movie. The action and the fights in this are directed so much better than any boxing movie I can think of. There's a fight about halfway through, I think it's Creed's first fight, that just feels so real and authentic, and I have so much respect for the movies for the way that it was filmed and the way that Ryan Johnson handled that. So, or sorry, not Ryan Coogler, not Ryan Johnson. So that will be my 53rd best movie of the year, and that's going to be preceded by 52, which is Snowpiercer. Bong Joon-ho is another director that just has my number right now. He can't do any wrong in my eyes. Okja isn't quite on my list, but it was one that I really liked, but Snowpiercer is. It stars Chris Evans, and it is such a fun, kinetic action movie, and not something that I expected going in. Bong Joon-ho has such a creative thought process, and just the way that he makes movies is unlike anyone else, and his plot structure and specifically just his ideas and the plots that are going on in his movies. And Snowpiercer is just a really great post-apocalyptic movie, and I love it, and it definitely deserved a spot on my list. So just short of the 50 mark, we have 51, Little Woman, Greta Gerwig's new Little Woman adaptation. I really liked this movie a lot. I loved it, and I think a lot of it is due to the cast, and especially when I think of course, Saoirse Ronan is at the top of her game right now, and just seeing her in every movie has been a delight. But Florence Pugh did an amazing job in this movie, and deservedly was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. But this movie just is a different take on the Little Woman story, and I think because of that, it really shines above a lot of the retellings that have gone before it. Greta Gerwig does an amazing job directing again, in the way she's able to tell the story. So it deserves a spot on my list as well. Number 50, we're halfway through my list. We have The Town, directed by Ben Affleck. This was a 2010 movie, and it's one of those heist movies that's just really fun to watch. Takes place in Boston. Ben Affleck always does a great job directing Boston. You can tell that it's a city that means a lot to him, and he makes that shine. It's almost a character in the town. I just love the action in this movie. I love the heist. It's one of the most fun heist movies that I can think of, and I just love the character building as well. So that one's number 50. At number 49, we have Moneyball, Brad Pitt movie from 2011. And this movie is just, it's a ton of fun. It's a really interesting telling of the Oakland Athletics and their baseball team, and how he was able to change the game through this concept of Moneyball that was actually introduced by Jonah Hill's character in the movie. And this is one of my favorite sports movies, I think, ever. I really am a huge fan of Moneyball, and high recommend to any sports fans out there, especially if you're a baseball fan. My number 48 movie is another one I saw really recently, actually, but it made my list. I had to slide it in on there, and it's Bad Times at the El Royale. Earlier in my list, I had The Hateful Eight, and I enjoyed The Hateful Eight a lot. Bad Times at the El Royale in my mind, actually does it better. And I was so intrigued and enthralled throughout this whole movie, watching these really interesting characters, these exciting songs that they were put in the soundtrack, and just the way that it tells the story from each different perspective, and it unveils a little bit more as a thriller. It's definitely worthy of being on my list, and it's really one of my favorites of the decade. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait to give it a second watch as well. Number 47, I have Phantom Thread. This is a Daniel Day-Lewis movie, because he just shines. Directed, of course, by Paul Thomas Anderson, a really competent and amazing director. But Phantom Thread, it's a slow-moving tale, but it's one that's just carried by Daniel Day-Lewis, and in addition to that, it has an amazing metaphor that runs throughout, and just the idea of marriage and what it does, and how it affects people, and all interwoven, no pun intended, through this story of this thread maker, or this dressmaker, is what he does. So it's an incredible and interesting tale. Moving on to 46, another Marvel movie here, Spider-Man: Homecoming. This is my favorite of the Spider-Man movies that came out in the MCU. And it was a really great and exciting telling of Spider-Man through that high school lens, and I feel like that's something we never quite got with the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield movies. I just really loved seeing Spider-Man in his element at school and watching him grow up. And it really is a high school movie at its heart. That's what makes it so lovable to me. I think it fits really well into the MCU, and it brings a character in that many people were asking for, and it's really fun to see it there. I'm gonna move on to number 45 now, where I have my only Star Wars movie of the list, and it is The Force Awakens. This was no doubt for me my favorite Star Wars movie of this decade. I thought it was just an incredible recreation of Episode 4, essentially, and told from a really modern standpoint, but with such exciting characters and action, and it had me enthralled and really thrilled to watch the rest of the way the story would unfold. Now, unfortunately, it didn't unfold quite the way I would have liked it to, but some people like The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker, more than Force Awakens. For me, Force Awakens was my favorite of the bunch, and I just, for me, it was definitely a solid, top 50 of the decade watch, and I had such a good time watching it. I've seen it so many times now. So I'm going to move on to 44, where I have my first Wes Anderson movie of the decade. He's another director I just adore, and his movie Moonrise Kingdom comes in at number 44 on my list. Moonrise Kingdom is just it's such a joyful story about these two kids and them falling in love at this camp, but it's told in only the way Wes Anderson can, with his such goofy and symmetrical style of the way he makes film. It's such a fun watch, and it's really charming. It's got great performances by even the adults who come into kind of a enhanced cameo role with Edward Norton and Bruce Willis and Bill Murray, and lots of fun, great Wes Anderson movie. Number 43, I have Mission Impossible Fallout. This is the last of the Mission Impossibles that's on the list, of course, but it was my favorite of all of them that came out. I thought that this movie was such a solid watch from 2018. And just, again, Tom Cruise and the way that he does his own stunts and makes it so watchable and so entertaining is incredible. And Mission Impossible Fallout is made so watchable by the action, how well it's filmed. And Christopher McQuarrie, I mean, this guy should just keep directing these Mission Impossible movies, because he's 2 for 2 and he's doing a great job, and the franchise is heading in a great way. So I love Mission Impossible Fallout. My number 42, I believe maybe my highest Marvel maybe not. But it's one of the higher Marvel movies on my list. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, the original one. It came out in 2014, and this movie was so fun. I actually saw it 3 times in theaters. Just had different groups of friends wanting to see it, and I had a great time each time I watched it. I think this is probably the funniest Marvel movie that I've seen, and I think that on top of that, it's a really awesome sci-fi movie that can stand on its own. I think that the way that James Gunn was able to direct it makes it such a fun romp and a worthwhile watch for anyone, whether you're a Marvel fan or just like good sci-fi movies or like comedies. It fits into a lot of those holes, and it does a really great job. And then my final one of this list is number 41. It's Best Picture winner. One of the higher ones I have on my list, and it's Spotlight from 2015. This is a really powerful and important movie that deals with the scandal with Catholic priests in the church, and watching this team uncover all that's happening and the shock value of while it's happening. This was definitely one of my favorite movies of that year because of how well told it was, and it had a very All the President's Men type feel of uncovering the truth and just realizing how shocking it is, and people not wanting to speak up because of these tragic and hard events. But it's incredibly well acted, incredibly well made, and it makes my list number 41. Well, I'm glad to be able to give you my 60 through 41 list. We are really getting up there, because the next film will be, our next video that I make will be numbers 40 through 21, so we will almost be there in that top 20. And I'm really excited to keep sharing them with you. Once again, let me know what your best of the decade is. Let me know how you feel about those movies that were on my list, and at this point, of course, if they're on my list, I just love them, adore them. So any of those movies are just complete 5-star reviews for me out of 5. So can't wait to hear from you, and can't wait to share more of my list with you.